And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Could some young people be embracing transgenderism simply because it is the latest trend? Well, that's the concern of the author and journalist Lionel Shriver, who in a column for The Spectator has argued that transitioning would hold a special appeal for some members of society due to a perceived increase in, quote, attention and elevated stature. The number of people signing up for sexual reassignment, by the way, has risen 4,400% in the UK between 2010 and 2018 alone. And as Lionel points out, the majority of those referred for gender treatment are adolescent girls, a traditionally suggestible demographic. Well, I'm delighted to say that Lionel joins me now. And Lionel, I really wanted to talk to you about this because obviously it is one of those conversations that most folk are too scared to have. But you say, and I found it fascinating, you say, look, it used to be cool to be gay, right? That used to be edgy, and that was something that a lot of people sort of chose to embrace. But now it's no longer particularly cool to be gay. That's very normal. So you've got some people, like, for example, the Tory MP, Jamie Wallace, now coming out as trans, even though effectively they're living a life as a man.
Well, I was struck by the fact that Boris Johnson admired him as especially courageous, which resonated with a remark that Joe Biden made last November, something about how transgender people were the bravest people that he'd ever known. I actually question how many transgender people he knows. And I guess I just reject that characterization. I have respect for what I believe to be a small core of people who are genuinely suffering from an alienation from the sexual characteristics of their bodies and need some relief. But I don't accept the proposition that we have had such an explosion of people claiming to be transgender just because they've come out of the woodwork, that it's okay now and they've always been there, and then suddenly we've given them permission to show themselves. It's statistically unlikely, and especially this weird switch between the sexes as to who's getting who's transitioning. It used to be overwhelmingly it was men, a few men, but it was men, and now it's girls, especially adolescent girls. It's 3/4 girls. Well, don't tell me that this is supposed to be something that it has to do with the way you were born. Well, how is it possible that there's been this huge swing in which sex is born this way? So let's call it what it is. It's a fad. And, in the media, it's sometimes alluded to as, it could be a social contagion. But that's a fad. That's what a social contagion is. And I question whether going along with a huge social phenomenon with a social fashion is courageous. At this point, it's almost the opposite.
And the risk is, Lionel, that fads spread in schools, don't they? That's where it starts. And so we're seeing arguably quite a lot of pressure or peer pressure or people wanting to be part of this. And you see examples of people who then want to detransition. And it's not always possible because of some of the hormone treatment that you take as a young person. So I am concerned, I think, that a lot of teenagers might do something that they regret because, I know what it was like as a teenager struggling with my sexuality. That the hormones run wild and you do at times think you're something that you're probably not.
Well, yes, this is not as innocent and passing as a sudden enthusiasm for hula hoops and pet rocks. I mean, it wouldn't matter if it didn't have long-term implications for people's lives.
Yeah.
And especially young people. I mean, look, adults get up to all kinds of things. So if they want to transition, fine. My big concern is with the underaged. And adolescence is ordinarily a time when you're trying things on, as you pointed out, and don't quite know who you are. You're naturally going to be looking for some kind of an answer. So I'm sympathetic with that seeking inclination. But this answer, especially since the medical personnel now are encouraging, ushering you rapidly into this set of procedures, the implications are huge. Most of these kids, if they get put on these drugs before they go through puberty, are not even going to be sexually functional. They will not be able to reach orgasm, which, I would miss. And they are likely to be infertile. They won't be able to have children. And they're making this decision at a time where, how can they know whether they want to have children when they're still children? So that, and that some of this surgery, if it goes on to surgery, this notion that, you can just have your breasts put back. I'm sorry. That's not the way it works.
No. So what's the solution, Lionel, for us all to take a deep breath and not hand out so many drugs? Or, I mean, how do we deal with this? Because, the figure that you quote in your column, this 4,400% increase, I mean, it's also going to put a lot of pressure on health systems.
Well, once a larger social trend gets started like this, it has a certain amount of momentum. And I mean, it's funny, I've written about another often maligned social trend, which is school shootings. I mean, that also had an element of the fad. Young people were copying each other. And in this case, in the same way that we can't just say, well, we want to make school shooting uncool. We're not necessarily going to be able to just say, well, we want to make transgenderism uncool. Older people are by definition themselves uncool. And they're the last people that teenagers listen to as to what they should do and what is fashionable. But I think we need a little more responsibility from the grown-ups on the medical side.
Yeah, indeed.
And that's really where the answer is. This whole affirmative approach, and also blackmailing parents with saying, well, if you don't go along with this, then your kid's going to kill themselves, so you'll be sorry. I think that is really wicked.
Yeah, it is. It is. Very good point. Powerful stuff as ever from the best-selling author, journalist and Spectator columnist Lionel Shriver. Thank you so much, Lionel.